Well, hi everybody. Good morning. It's good to see you all. I mean, it's the first time we've done this for over years, so welcome along to classes. As you know, my name is Eddie. I'm one of the senior tutors here, and I take these Discovering Buddhism classes. So I think we'll begin as we normally do by doing a short breathing meditation. I'll set up a visualization, and then we can take refuge together. So just get comfortable in your seat. Make sure your back is straight and shoulders are relaxed. And as you breathe normally and naturally, become aware of any movements that might take place at the abdomen or upper chest, whenever you inhale or exhale. And while you remain aware of these movements, imagine your focus and attention becoming stronger, and your sense of relaxation pervading the body and mind. And while you are in this relaxed state, imagine the spiritual families of all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas arrive in the space above you. And surrounding you in seats are all sentient beings who are related to you either as parents, uncles and aunts, or brothers, sisters, or children. And throughout all these ever-changing relationships, recollect that your happiness is always dependent upon their kindness. And while they equally wish to avoid suffering and to be happy, every one of them has never been genuinely happy. But now the auspicious causes and conditions to awaken the present form the resolve which you have not previously had, which is to quickly attain for them the state of awakening. And by doing so, turn their mind to the truth. And to practice that truth as a path, removing obstacles from the path, and purifying their confusion into wisdom, thereby revealing their natural birthright, state of unchanging goodness. To accomplish this, we're going to take refuge in the spiritual lineage of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas above us and generate a mind of enlightenment. We'll also recite the preliminary prayers and offer a mandala to the teacher as a means to prepare our path. So taking refuge and generating the mind of enlightenment, I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. And so stabilizing this wish and enhancing it, we'll recite the four immeasurables. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. Now, the state of awakening that we seek, which will bring about the welfare of others, is dependent upon us abandoning whatever hinders that state and accumulating all the causes and conditions which will produce it. These are all within the 7 in prayer, which we can also recite. Reverently, I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind. I present clouds of every type of offering, actual and imagined. I declare all my negative actions accumulated since beginning this time, and rejoice in the merit of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until the end of psychic existence and turn the wheel of Dharma for living beings. I dedicate known merits and all others to the great enlightenment. We're going to make an offering to the merit field in front of us. I think the essence of the offering is to let go, in particular let go of the clinging to oneself, one's body, and one's merits. So in the absence of that clinging, imagine a wonderful pure land. This is what we're offering. For this ground, anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, all continents the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha field and offer it. May all living beings enjoy this pure land. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Nayatayam. We let go. There's an absence. The Buddha's bodhisattvas smile at us with delight. And the merit field in front of us begins to dissolve, melting into the central figure of Shakyamuni Buddha. An emanation leaves his heart, moves through space, and comes to abide above the crown of your head, facing in the same direction you are. This emanation descends, enters the crown of your head, and comes to rest at the level of your heart. Light rays fill your body and mind. The light goes out through the pores of your skin, filling all of space. Boundaries between self and other vanish. No self, no other, no inner, no outer. Resting in the natural expanse. And the wish to benefit others arises. Light rays all withdraw. We find ourselves embodied, sitting on the seat we are. We're breathing normally and naturally. And we wish to benefit others. And we breathe in through the nostrils, exhale through the mouth, And just simply bring your awareness back into the room. So once again, welcome. Good to see you all. It's our first class called Death and Rebirth. And the course, of course, is going to last for 9 weeks, the course, of course. And it's going to be complemented by some reading assignments, which I hope you'll find informative and interesting. So the subject matter will include, of course, death and impermanence, in terms of impermanence, both gross and subtle. The advantages of recollecting death and impermanence and the faults of not doing so. The death process itself, rebirth, and the 6 realms. So during the course, I will answer questions that you'll find in the review material. And by doing so, I'll hopefully enhance your knowledge of this topic called death and rebirth. So today's topics we're going to look at impermanence, first of all, and in particular the 2 aspects of it called gross and subtle. So gross and subtle have different meanings depending upon the context. Here it just means what's easier to comprehend and what's a bit more difficult. The main subject matter will be focused around a topic called the 8 worldly concerns. And these concerns actually hinder or contaminate the practice of Dharma. So we'll talk about what these concerns are, how they contaminate pure practice, and then I'm going to introduce you some solutions for these 8 worldly concerns. And the solutions will be of 3 types. So these are like what they call opponents. We can also look at how we can actually transform the mind. We can also look at how we can just sort of recognize what's going on. Each of these methods will oppose these 8 worldly concerns. So a little bit from a book called The Foundation of Buddhist Practice by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. They're saying there's basically 2 types of happiness. We've got temporary happiness and long-lasting happiness. While we are within cyclic existence, then the temporary happiness includes everything we sort of experience now, and also attainment of higher rebirth as a human being. So we have this huge potential to achieve any of those goals: higher rebirth, liberation, and enlightenment. And if we learn the Dharma skillfully, we can use it to enrich our lives right now, and also put into place causes to bring about liberation or enlightenment. Now, although we have this potential, we often fail to recognize it. Or even if we do recognize it and know of it, we can often be then distracted. And so we don't use what we know. Now, the chief obstacles, the chief means of being distracted are these things called the 8 worldly concerns or the 8 worldly dharmas. And like I said, this is the major topic of today's lesson. Now, these are the major books that I've used to present the material and relied upon. So these first 2 books, Science, they come from a new library that's been put out by the Dalai Lama and Thupten Jinpa, and they're fantastic. These are the first 2, I think they're doing 5. Thank you, Meta, 5 of them. Yeah. So the first one was about the physical world, and I've relied on that to present the material on subtle and gross impermanence. The second book is about the mind, and that has this very good presentation on the 8 worldly concerns I've never come across anywhere else, and it really presents the ways you can oppose the 8 worldly concerns using the methods of sutra. The other book called Foundation of Buddhist Practice has a really good presentation of 8 worldly concerns and impermanence, both gross and subtle. The two books that I've relied upon to present you with a means to oppose the 8 worldly concerns in terms of thought transformation are this book called Lojong and a book called Insight into Emptiness. And the book in the middle is a complete overview and quite an in-depth presentation of the 8 worldly concerns. So all of them are very valuable. Some of them go into the material in a lot more depth. And those books that do that are the science and philosophy books. So let's begin by looking at impermanence first of all. So in general, impermanence is posited on whether something undergoes change. So if it's changeable, then it's impermanent. And we've got two different types of phenomena, what they call conditioned phenomena and phenomena that are not conditioned. So conditioned and unconditioned. And they make up all the phenomena that exist. What makes the difference between conditioned and unconditioned? Well, the conditioned are conditioned. They're conditioned through causes and conditions, and the unconditioned are not. That's the big difference. So anything that changes is conditioned. What's it conditioned by? Causes and conditions. Anything that has causes and conditions, in other words, is subject to change. And being subject to change is primarily a function of the causes that produce it. So the causes are impermanent. They change. Whatever the phenomena is will change. And they will undergo continuous change. So we can see this all the time in the world. We can see it with ourselves, our own bodies, our own minds. We can look around at trees. Because anything in the natural world, you'll see it'll undergo change. And if we look at what the definition of this thing called impermanence is, it's just that which is momentary. And this term momentariness is interesting, refers to not enduring for a second moment beyond the time of its occurrence. So you just have to sort of think about this, it's a bit mind-boggling. So this is sort of like in general, like I was saying, if you really, I've put up a thing online to have a look at this material, to go into depth, and it's very useful to do so.
So it really is moment by moment.
Yeah, and the second moment's not the first moment. The second moment's already, and the first moment's gone. So we look at what we call coarse impermanence. Impermanence is easy to understand and sort of visible to our senses. And then we'll look at the more subtle impermanence. So impermanence here refers to the ceasing of a continuity. So impermanence means in terms of a continuum, something that seems to last over time, like trees, like human beings, like the desks, like they're just there for a while, aren't they? And over time, the continuum of time, enough time will go by, they won't be there.
Like those old houses on Restoration Australia.
Yeah, like the old houses. So, a chair breaks, a human being dies. These are coarse impermanence. The continuum of the life of the human being comes to an end, finished. Chair's here for a while, it gets knocked over, the leg breaks, we don't use it as chair anymore. This is what they call gross impermanence. And for persons like ourselves, people who initially begin on the path, this is an important subject. And this is what we talk about, like, you know, in terms of ending of the continuum of human life called death. So we sort of deal with that as a beginning topic. Why? It's to help us evaluate the priorities that we have in life. You know, so most people don't want to think about death. Most people find it quite uncomfortable to talk about death. They don't want to think that this life will come to an end. So they just live their lives as they do. Mainly all focused around these 8 worldly concerns. But then, as we all know, then life comes to an end. Death will come whether we think about it or not. And oftentimes when that happens, then you're suddenly like, oh my God, like now it's really important. And you don't know what to do. So it's much better to sort of think about it way beforehand and then know what to do, and you can sort of relax in the state and have no regrets about how you lived your life. So as a beginner, it's important to do that. And it really helps you sort of enter a spiritual path, to just think about one's own impending death. However, when one goes to meditate on the topic, then subtle impermanence is even more important. Because what you can often find is justice doesn't make a great deal of change. You can just think, well, I know I'm going to die. Everybody dies. You know? And this is what we've found for people who've actually gone into meditation for some time, and they sit there and just go, look, nothing's happening. I know I'm going to die. Nothing else is happening other than that. I know I'm going to die. Yeah. So there must be something more to it. And what I've read of is that when that happens, what often takes place is the other people in the retreat who know more about impermanence, especially in terms of subtle impermanence, they explain it to that person and it's like, oh, now the light bulbs go on. So it's like, you know, this thing not remaining for a second moment has some impact on you, and then you make a change. So here, like I said, coarse impermanence, especially in terms of the person, this remains, you know, not remaining after death. This person of this life does not remain after death. Eddie is dead, he's not here anymore, he's gone. Now, when we talk about this coarse impermanence, there are different ways we can do about it, different ways we can think about it. And here's this way that I found in the book called The Foundation of Buddhist Practice by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. This is thinking of impermanence, we can do it basically 5 ways, 5 things to consider in terms of destruction. You can see a couple of big buildings here being destroyed. So there is something that exists and then it gets annihilated. It gets destroyed. In terms of the person, the cessation of the life force, we call it death. The person no longer exists. The person is destroyed. The impermanence of cultural trends and attitudes points to the changes occurring in society. So 100 years ago, women had few options in life outside of marriage and family. And now more opportunities are available to them and society benefits from their contribution. There's been actual change in terms of culture and society and in the attitudes. Impermanence in terms of separation. This is the case that whatever comes together must separate. It's impossible to always remain together. So this is tremendous to always remember about ourselves and the relationships we're in, that we have to part. We cannot stay together as much as we would like to. It's impossible. When wealth comes to us, we're separated from that. You know, like money, just holding on to money is no good. It doesn't do anything. You have to spend it, don't you? So we have it, and it's gone, and it brings some benefit. There's nothing to sort of hold on to. So organizations and companies form and dissolve. Relationships form and dissolve. The next one's called sudden impermanence. Is the fact that circumstances can change very quickly and unexpectedly. So we I think, are quite familiar with this. We watch the news. Now, we can be sitting there and suddenly the whole earth just moves. An earthquake is taking place, and it's like the world's never the same. In fact, we've had a couple of students that were here, and they were in a major earthquake in Nepal. And Jackie still feels it, right? That trauma of that thing. Everything, you're just on the ground, everything is stable, and then it's not. And it's such a shock. You know, that shock is like stayed within his body. You can have like these, you know, the mass shootings that take place. It's this sudden impermanence. Everything's just gone to school, gone to your class, it's all normal, and then suddenly, like, it's not. Being in a car, it's all normal. We're just going down the road, and suddenly, from behind or the side, or
it's like those emergency 24 hours in emergency shows where they say no one wakes up thinking that they're going to end up in emergency today.
That's right. They suddenly. And finally, we've got the nature of impermanence. So this is, like I was talking about before, everything arising due to causes and conditions, and therefore transitory in nature. Or whether we want things to be stable and predictable, or wish it to change quickly. Change is its nature. Impermanence is its nature. So this is also useful to remember when you have things happening to you that you don't want to happen. Like you're sick, for instance. You know, you can realize, oh, the nature of sickness is to change. Sickness is produced. It's having this effect on my body. It won't stay the same. Changes will take place. So this is the way we can think of impermanence. Now here's a lovely quote that I've got next from a text called The Words of My Perfect Teacher, and it's by a man called Patrul Rinpoche. You can see here it says that impermanence is everywhere, yet I still think things will last. I have reached the gates of old age, yet I still pretend I'm young. Bless me and misguided beings like me, that we might truly understand impermanence. I really like this quote, you know. I really sort of like the tone that comes across in the quotes too from this book, The Words of My Perfect Teacher. So His Holiness says that contemplating death is neither morbid nor unrealistic. To the contrary, it helps us to prepare for death and to live with more wisdom and kindness. And this is very, very true, especially if you're in relationship with someone else. You know it's going to come to an end. You may as well be kind to one another. You must all like each other because you are going to be separated. And I know many people who, not many people, but a few people who went to work or separated from their partner, and it wasn't, they never even said, we'll see you tonight, or have a good day. It was just like, they thought that was going to happen. When they came home, their partner was still there, they were dead. So if you don't want to leave each other on a sour note. Because, you know, believe me, that's the thing that comes back at you. You know, you'll always remember that, and you'll regret it. And so that's another wonderful thing about studying this topic. You want to die without regret. You want to live without regrets too. So this topic can help you do that. So some of you who may be watching have not heard this. So Demi's saying that when her and her children separate each morning, if they've had a misunderstanding or have not spoken to each other well, they will pause there and
family hug.
Say, sorry, have a good day, Mum. And Mum will say, have a good day too. You know, you go out there like that. Because like I said, you know, no one knows. Death can take place suddenly. So once we sort of become familiar with this material, well, hopefully, you know, we're trying to bring about a change in our behaviors and our way of thinking. So we are more kinder because we are wiser. Like, we know these things happen. So let's act in accordance with what we know. So now briefly, let's look at subtle impermanence. So once again, impermanence meaning momentariness. And here's the interesting stuff. Disintegrating even at the time of the first moment. So it's not even like a moment and then it begins to disintegrate. There's no stability at all within that moment. It disintegrates as it comes into being. And it means, you know, not remaining from the time of the first moment to the second moment. It's said, and I think we just think about this, how subtle impermanence is such an insight into the emptiness of phenomena. It's so close to it.
So is this that the change is happening much faster? You're drilling down onto a much faster level of change?
Yeah, a much more subtle level. That's up. So, you know, we look at things and we go, it's really slow, isn't it? Like nothing seems to be moving. Everything's stable.
No one looks like they're aging today.
No, that's right.
But we're all looking a year older than last time we saw each other.
That's right. Actually, yeah. I think we've been here, what, half an hour? We're half an hour older. And just half an hour of changes have gone by. And it's not obvious. And yet that's happened. So one of the ways of discerning the differences between coarse impermanence and subtle impermanence is that coarse impermanence can often be ascertained through your senses. You know, like we can use our eyes to go, oh, the chair's broken, or the person is dead. Subtle impermanence is not. However, at the same time, I also remember films where they train a camera on something that's undergoing change, it's not visible to the senses. And over time, that thing just changes, right? And then what they do is they speed it up. So you see it taking place really quickly. But in fact, the changes could have taken place over a year, 6 months, 9 months, a long time. We see it within even less than that, a few seconds. We go, wow, like massive changes. And I always go, wow. I kind of go, yeah, we're seeing it like this, but it was always going on that 9 months or a year or 15 minutes. That was what was going on. And our senses just couldn't pick it up. But when they use this high-speed film, then we can. And then we can go, it's really happening.
Works for everything except McDonald's hamburgers.
It's take a long time. Yeah. So this, I think, yeah, so this is a real big one, the subtle impermanence. It means that all conditioned phenomena are created in the nature of disintegration. You know, like for a seed to produce the plant, the seed has to disintegrate. It's not there when the plant is there. For us to be who we are now, our childhood had to disintegrate. The baby that we were had to disintegrate. Fell apart. And then the falling apart produced us. And we are falling apart, not we're going to, we are. And everything is like that. here's a brief meditation we can do. So I should also mention like how we can do meditations on impermanence, for instance. So when we go to meditate on what we understand, it's always good to first set up the conditions, good conditions. So what this often is like we did when we took refuge. Sit there, imagine you're surrounded by all other living beings who are also undergoing what you're going to familiarize yourself with. And above you, you have the Buddha and the merit field. You can have this thing like that. Have the disintegration take place in the merit field, comes across, comes into you. Right, now you have the Buddha's wisdom. You have awakened yourself to the facts of impermanence. Now all you're going to do is familiarize yourself with them. So you think, have I thought I will die today? Have you thought I'll die this evening? You probably go, no. But it seems there's plenty of time to become involved in the 8 mundane concerns. The practice of Dharma is pushed aside. So this came about, this little meditation, and that's all Khyentse Rinpoche said, but it was enough. And it could be enough for you too to go, no, I didn't think I was going to die today. I'm not thinking that, I'm thinking I'm going to live. You go, okay, so you engage in the Dharma practice today? Well, here we are. Obviously, we might not have thought this, but we're here. You'll see as the classes progress, how thinking of your death in the morning or at night gives it a great deal of power. Like you engage, you start practicing immediately. Yeah. No, that's right. Yeah, this gives you, when it's heavy, but it's also got more like power too.
So this one also seems to kick in with, you know, if we think we've got all the time to have an argument, or we've got time to be miserable and be in a funk, or we've got all the time in the world to be depressed. But if we thought, oh, I will die this evening, then would we spend the day being miserable?
Yeah. So here Lama Zopa Rinpoche says, unless we're constantly aware of what's happening in our mind, there's a real danger that everything becomes a service to the thought of the 8 worldly dharmas. Therefore, we should try to meditate on the 8 worldly dharmas and other lamb room subjects as much as possible, like in the face of death. He says there are many ways to meditate on these 8 worldly dharmas. I'll introduce them to the next slide. But when we do and compare it with death, it's good to like set up this visualization.
So it is this one thinking, say for instance, I will die today, to flip the thought over on its head, because we normally have the I won't die today. That's right. So it just flips it to the opposite. Yeah. Instead of just qualifying a little bit while I might.
Yeah. The worldly thing is, the ordinary thing is, well, I might die today, but I probably won't.
Yeah, that's the hidden subject.
Yeah. And this is saying, don't do that. Go the other way and then see what happens.
Because on one level we will die today. That previous moment.
That's right. It's already finished. That's right. This is what this shows you, that actually your death is taking place ever since you were born. It's just not, coarse death has not taken place yet. We can go, yeah, he's dead. But actually, it's right. Our past has died. Our childhood is gone. Baby body we had is gone. Youth is gone. And here we are, old people. Moving ever closer to our death. Yeah, just the way it is. Okay, let's have a look now at this next topic, the major topic, this 8 worldly concerns, and how we can actually use impermanence as an antidote to the clinging to these worldly concerns. So let's look at what they are actually, first of all. So you come across these terms and they're said in many different ways. So sometimes they're called the 8 worldly concerns. Sometimes they're called the 8 mundane concerns. Other times they're called the 8 worldly dharmas. Lots of different ways of speaking of it. And each of them, of course, has some import. Each of them can make a sort of bit of difference to you. So first I want to show you some of the words that are used and what they might seem to mean and what they might actually mean. So the word mundane, first of all, just means like ordinary. So ordinary concerns. The next word is called, so it's called the 8 mundane concerns. So the 8 concerns of ordinary people. But then we have what they call the 8 worldly concerns. And then worldly means unstable. And lastly, we've got this word Dharma. So the word Dharma got 11 different meanings. The most common ones that we're familiar with is the word is teaching. And it's got a capital D. The teachings of the Buddha are called the Dharma. They're not called Buddhism, even though they use the term a lot now. It's called Dharma. The Buddha taught the Dharma. So you go like, well, what's Dharma mean? Well, that's got a whole, like I said, a lot of different meanings too. One of them is phenomena, things. So we've got teachings, we've got things. When it's a thing, it's a small d. Another meaning for Dharma is to hold. So what does Dharma hold? 2 different ways of saying it. One is their identity. So Dharmas hold their identity. So this is a thing, it's a Dharma. What's the identity that it holds? Clock. That's right, that's its identity. It holds this identity. We call it a clock. That's what it's holding. When Dharma's with a big D, it means holding back from suffering.
Is that like holding from the unstable earthquake of the worldly?
Yeah, instability of the mind.
Of the mind.
That is held by the afflictions. So here it's really interesting. So the word Dharma, when you call it the 8 worldly Dharmas, so we know 8 stays the same, 8 worldly Dharmas. So then we've got worldly, meaning unstable. Right? 8 unstable, then we've got this word called Dharma. So 8 unstable phenomena, 8 unstable things. It is the teaching. So the Dharma that's taught and realized is that all phenomena lack inherent existence and exist dependently. That's the Dharma, that's just the way things exist. Whatever exists lacks inherent existence, but does exist dependently upon other things. That's how it is. Right? In the teachings of the Buddha, in terms of tenet systems, in terms of what we agree to and understand and so forth, that's although things do lack inherent existence, that's the most subtle meaning. It's the most subtle way of getting at everything that exists, right? So before that, you can look at things that exist in other ways. And one of these other ways is that things truly exist. So things exist, and when we say that things truly exist, it means that things are existing in the way they appear to us. So the way things appear to us is the way they exist. So that's then what's termed true existence. In fact, nothing exists truly. But this is the Dharma, this is what the word Dharma means here. So it's like saying, if things were truly existent, they'd actually be stable. They'd be the way that they appear to be. So this is interesting. So we've got 8 unstable things that are actually appearing to be stable.
Right, there's the rub.
There's the rub. So this is, I read this, like, wow, I've never come across anything like this before. So this is in Lama's Opus book. We really breaks this thing down. Lama's going, now that's great for my mind to hear it like that go. That's how we sort of work in the world, isn't it? It looks like this, it is like that. But like I said, we look at one another here, this room, it all seems to be stable. It doesn't seem to have changed at all. So that's what we do. If we thought that was the case, that's the view of true existence. We're holding on to that idea. It's true. But in fact, it's not true. Exactly, it's not like that at all. So this is what I'm saying. It's just, so what? And this idea that it is like that, we call that attachment. We've overestimated the things that we're doing.
So we've overestimated the permanence of things.
Yeah, that's right. In fact, there's no permanence there. It's all impermanent. We've overestimated. Now, not only this, so we have another thing about Dharma. So we have what we call Dharma, and that which is not Dharma. So here we're talking really about the Buddhist teaching. So when we speak of Dharma as being distinct from a non-Dharma, the line of demarcation, so what separates Dharma from non-Dharma, is the presence or absence of the 8 worldly concerns. If you're engaged in 8 worldly concerns, you're not engaged with Dharma. It's like saying, oh yeah, the impermanent things, everything is here? No, they're permanent. So we're completely opposite, isn't it? You know, we know everything here is produced, therefore it's going to change. But it looks stable. Maybe you thought, well, it is stable. That's non-Dharma. That's not the truth.
So then everything that we do based on that mistake, then, you know, we assume we've got all the time in the world, all the leisure in the world. So then it's all flavored by that mistake.
That's right. So we think that, and of course, we're not going to engage in Dharma. We're going to engage in all sorts of other things to be happy. And you go, well, that's not Dharma. But why? Because it's driven by this flavoring of the 8 worldly concerns. So it's not, you know, so I hope you can all see here, it's not the things, as we'll see these 8 things shortly. That's not the problem. It's overestimation. It's this attachment. It's seeing it wrongly and thinking it's true. That's the problem. So Dharma here, like I said, means truly existent, when in fact there isn't anything that's truly existent. But it appears that way, and we often act that way. And we know this, especially when people we know and care for die. Often people become very, very upset, especially people who have no inkling of the Dharma. And so you say, yeah, so they've grasped the thing as being truly existent. I thought, I mean, I knew they'd die, but I never thought they'd die today. Even though they might have been in that hospital bed for months and saying, yeah, it could be, like, you know, wow, they've lived this long. They've actually gone long. Oh, that's been good. We expect them to keep going, and then no.
Which we do, because people can be in a hospital bed and we just think, oh, I don't have time to see them today. I'll go.
That's right.
I'll go at the end of the week.
So we had an event last year where one of our students was unwell, and when she knew she was going to die. And one of the last things she said to me, she said, I'm just going to wait for this other student to come over and then I'm going to give her these books. And I was there going, well, she died that night. Never got to see the student. And when we saw the student, like she was like so shocked. I was like thinking,
she was actually the one that was beside herself with tears. And it was this real regret of having stuffed it up.
Yeah,
or put it off.
Put it off, yeah, I'll go tomorrow. I'll go tomorrow. But no, you better should go today.
And so everyone else was just sad, that this student has died, and then she had this double sadness of she's died and this incredible regret of not having put up with her.
Yep. Jeanette, you're going to say something? Yeah. No, that's right. You wouldn't forget something like that. And that's one of the things that this should show us, Don't put it off till tomorrow. You don't know when your death will come, which comes first, death or tomorrow. No one knows. So, it's got a lot of advantages to us to contemplate this topic. There's a lot of benefit. Peter?
A couple of years ago, I was in here it was a Saturday, talking to you, telling you about a good friend of mine who was in the palliative care centre, Renton. And I said, I'm going up to see him tomorrow. You said, go today. And I ended up going today. He died that night.
Oh, right.
Thank you, Eddie.
There you go. Thank you, Peter. Good on you. Yeah. Okay, so let's move on. Let's have a look at these 8 worldly concerns. So here's a lovely quote from Nagarjuna. So he says, you who know the world, take gain and loss, or bliss and pain, or kind words and abuse, or praise and blame. These 8 mundane concerns, make them the same, and don't disturb your mind. So here is we're talking about make them the same, meaning equalize them. Make them the same. So here, equalizing these 8 worldly concerns means to maintain equanimity by preventing one's own mind from falling under the sway of these concerns. But to do this really depends on an understanding, a good understanding of the faults of the 4 likes and the 4 dislikes, as well as understanding their antidotes. And this is what we're going to talk about next, on the way. Let's have a look at the next one. So here are the 8 worldly concerns. So, seeking pleasure, gain, praise, and fame. So it's not just seeking, it's seeking with this idea that they're actually going to give us more than what they actually can. We've got really sort of attachment to them. And the other side is avoiding or having aversion towards pain, loss, disparagement, and disrepute. So there are 4 sets of pairs. On one side we have attachment, the other side we have aversion. So this is from, I'll say now, comes from a book called The Mind by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. The 8 worldly concerns are pleasure and pain, gain and loss, praise and disparagement, and fame and disrepute. These are the 8 concerns with which ordinary worldly beings are preoccupied and that hinder our minds from progressing towards better states. Concern about pleasure when one likes pleasant feelings. Concern about pain when one dislikes painful feelings. Concern about gain when one likes getting things such as food, clothing, a dwelling, and so on. And concern about loss when one dislikes not getting things such as food and clothing and so on. Being concerned about praise, when one likes to be praised. And concern about disparagement, when one dislikes being blamed and criticized. And lastly, concern about fame, when one likes having a good reputation. And concern about disrepute, when one dislikes having a bad reputation. So attachment arises towards one part of each pair. Pleasure, especially for sight, sound, smells, taste, and tactile sensations. Praise and approval, good reputation or image. And aversion arises towards the other part of each pair. Discomfort or pain, and lack of money, and possessions, blame and criticism. So being preoccupied with these 8, which center on our own happiness and only this life. Then you become very reactive to our environment and the people in it. This emotional reactivity, and clinging to what we like and pushing away what we don't, brings difficulties in this life and impedes actualizing long-term Dharma goals. So the long-term Dharma goals are rebirth in higher states, liberation and enlightenment. Now, if our concern is only about these things, so the meaningful word is only, we will not achieve any of those goals.
And I was just thinking, if this happens even in the middle of a Dharma teaching where you can get preoccupied about how uncomfortable your seat is and you haven't paid any attention to what they've been saying.
That's true.
Just take your eye off the ball, and it's like in the scheme of things, if that was the last Dharma teaching I ever went to, and all I can remember is how uncomfortable this cushion was.
No, this is true. I mean, this happened to me, was it yesterday morning? Same thing. I was doing analytical meditation, and my God, my mind's just distracted off to things about my time here. It's like, it was good because I went, that's distraction. Come back to the analysis again, and off it goes again. I mean, this is how we are.
No, it's just for the chair spacing, whether we're at 1.5 meters space or 2 square or 4 square meters. So we just had to set up the room. You can sit wherever you like. Every chair is your chair, Jeanette, wherever you're here.
So now we're going to have a look at each of these pairs, and we're going to apply antidotes to them. And like I said before, we've got 3. You can categorize all the antidotes into 3 categories. So what is called opponents, and the other word they use is purify. So we often use the word purify, means use an opponent against the obstacle. That's one method, and it's the method we need to all become familiar with. The second method is called transformation, and transformation is really talking about Tonglen practice. And that's really about developing the mind of enlightenment, bodhicitta. So the first thing is renunciation, this other one is bodhicitta. The third way of categorizing is just called recognition. And that's really concerned the higher practices like Mahamudra, Dzogchen, highest yoga tantra. But it can be done by any of us right on the spot, any moment. All we need to do is look directly at what's happening. If we can do that, that is the antidote. So we've got recognition, thought transformation or transformation, and then we've got purifying behaviors, opponents. So overestimating pleasure in the 3 antidotes. So once again from His Holiness, he says, how do we develop equanimity when facing a great liking for pleasant feelings? When one's mind has fallen under the sway of excessive delight in pleasant feelings, one should contemplate carefully as follows. I do not want pain. I only want pleasant feelings. But merely wanting that is not enough. I need a method to bring this about. Also, just any suitable method is not enough. To purchase beautiful ornaments, delicious foods, wines, and so on requires strenuous effort. This means that for the sake of pleasure, I must earn a living, cultivate land, build up a business, and so on. In brief, I cannot be sure that any work I do for the sake of pleasure will actually lead to happiness alone. One should carefully contemplate again and again in this way. So I know, I used to do that, and it stopped me doing a whole lot of things. You know, it's just like, like what you have to do to get it. No, forget about it. I'm not doing it. It's just too hard. It's just too much. It just takes up too much time. But you'll be amazed like how many people will put the time in.
Well, especially if you think that's it. If you're a materialist,
That's right.
then that is the only thing to
That's
put
right.
the time into.
That's right. But, and guess what? If you do that, you die anyway. It's no good to you. Anyone who's ever experienced pleasure will know you don't even have to die for it to finish. I mean, man, it's like, that's why they put up bubbles, because in the thought transformation technique, you look at that and go, if you look at pleasure itself, it's like a bubble. It looks great, it feels great, it's shiny, and it's gone like that. Impermanence. It's disintegrating. Think of the highest pleasures you can experience and have, and how long they last. They're not very long. No matter how. In fact, if you pay good attention to them, you'll see you don't even see them. It's when you don't pay attention, it seems that they're lasting, that they're great and a long time. So in terms of like impermanence, we can go, well, guess what? Pleasure is impermanent and I'm impermanent. And it just can't last because it's produced, dependent upon a lot of conditions. So it's no good to the dead, and I will be dead one day. In fact, I remember I did this thing, I did the complete opposite of this when I was growing up. When I was a drug addict hedonist, mate, every time I got off, I'd go, right, focusing on this. Like, you want this to last. But it doesn't. It's really shocking as soon as you pay attention. It doesn't last. Then you go, oh, just a bit more then. But something come quite right here, I just need a bit more. Don't matter. And you have too much, you're dead.
And there's the instability.
Yeah. The fact that I remember one time, looking back on it much later, becoming a Dharma student, I look back at that and I go, wow, that's like what they talk about, the pleasure of the gods. It's not actually pleasure, but there's no suffering either. It's just this sense of nothing. And that's, it's like this thing, and I'm going, I don't want to just feel nothing. I want to feel good. But there comes this thing where you get good and then it goes neutral. And then it becomes like ordinary. And then it's gone. I'm just ordinary.
So is that because the good actually is that the changeable happiness? So because there is a change, then you notice the change and you think, oh, it's good. And then the change
changes again.
It wears off.
Yeah.
And then it's neutral.
Yeah. And then it's actually, and then what they say, it's only suffering.
Ah.
So that's what, these sort of things, I think I was quite lucky that I was paying attention most of the times as a drug addict. What was going on
you didn't die.
And I didn't, well, I did. That was the thing. I died a number of times and came back. I was very lucky to find Buddhism and then put it into another framework. And go, wow, that's useful. I was paying attention there, but I never had the Buddhist framework or narrative to put it into. I can see what I thought was actually pleasure was actually suffering. It was just the diminishment of suffering. That's all it was. And then when it went, I went back to it. And then once again, it was like hunting the streets. I was dissatisfied. That was the life. But even you don't have to do that. You just have to look at what's going on now with you, right? It's like most times I'll be here, I go, shit, I got to go. Where? Into town. I need to be stimulated. Like this is suffering. I've got to go to a movie. Or I've got to go to the fridge. I do. I've got to stop the suffering. I've got to change the state. And then, then you have too much coffee, too much chocolate. It's like, yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Whatever, right. Yeah.
So if you really like we should just enjoy it. Like I love when I go to the pool.
Yeah, that's right.
Sometimes everything just that bright shine.
Yeah, it is.
I really enjoy it.
Yeah.
Like finding pleasure when pleasure comes rather than seeking it.
So we do seek pleasure, and there's nothing wrong with that. But what we should, if we're going to seek pleasures, then what type of pleasures? And if you're going to seek these mundane pleasures or changeable pleasure, you have to accept that they change. Don't add more and have attachment to it. If you don't have attachment, no problem.
So enjoy it while it lasts.
Yeah, and that's right. Any of that, try and keep attachment out of it and enjoy it for what it is. The walk for what it is, the feelings arise, they go. That's just how it is, no problem. You don't need to change any of that.
So this is why you've got overestimating pleasure.
Yeah.
Because it's not, pleasure's not the problem.
But pleasure's not the problem. And neither are the objects the problem. Pleasure and object, they're not the problem. It's the extra thing we bring into it.
Like thinking every time we do that, like every time I go to the books.
Yeah,
that's right.
and then one day you
Well,
go
even
for a
like
walk and it's polluted and people put rubbish everywhere and you get really upset about it.
Then people wonder why Alice is sitting and laughing along the walk because it's all just
Sometimes I think it's funny.
So this is a technique at what they call purifying. Yeah? There's another technique. Oh, is this frozen? It's frozen.
Here's the one. I've only got 20 minutes.
Yeah, I'm going to motor it in.
So it's about
Okay, great.
riding the waves of the ups and downs.
That's right. With equanimity.
And letting them
Let them play
not
out.
holding on to either.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. With it's like I say, have a mind that's, this goes along with it, equal. In thought transformation technique, you take whatever you feel great about and offer it away, offer it up, give it away. Don't keep it. Stops the clinging, stops the attachment. May everything that's good I experience, may someone else have it. May it bring them closer to enlightenment. So no holding, no clinging, and active generosity. And through the offering of this, may I become enlightened to benefit them. May this bring them closer to enlightenment. And so this is a different way, completely different way. And lastly, turn your attention directly on your feelings, the pleasure. Watch it. What happens? That, like I said, this is the wisdom, real wisdom aspect, this part. You don't find what your gaze is put upon. You won't even find yourself there as the person experiencing it. And so just the natural way it always was, PhD. And you won't have any clinging or grasping to that. It's just this, what they call great equanimity. So this is the other. Now, in terms of the overestimation of pain in three antidotes, what's the thing about now we know about impermanence? What do we know? What does impermanence really mean? It will change, yeah. Whatever the phenomenon is, if it's produced, it'll change. It can't stay the same. So pain is changing. This thing that I'm calling pain, what I'm feeling, it's unpleasant, it's already in change. It's already in flux. Don't grasp onto it to be like stable. which people do all the time, don't we? It's not like that. So there's a difference between appearance and the reality. Secondly, in terms of the thought transformation, what do you think we should do with really unpleasant feelings? Yeah, not only that, have some more. Give me some more. And everybody feels really unhappy with pain. Give me yours too. Every pain is the pain of self-cherishing. I want to free myself of self-cherishing in everybody. May my pain be the foundation that can bear the pain of everyone. So we take that and we put it on our self-cherishing, meaning we put it on the indifference we feel towards others' pain. We don't want to be like that anymore. We want to acknowledge others are suffering and I want to do something about it. Once again, in terms of the wisdom aspect, they're just like a visual aberration, meaning pain looks true, but it's not. So looking at, yeah, well, and physical pain.
Yeah, because you think of people who will go through incredible physical pain when their mind isn't on the pain, but on trying to save somebody or, whatever. They'll run into a burning fire to save somebody.
And I often say,
I just wasn't.
I never felt a thing. It was only later on. In fact, there was a good story about who was the nun that did the 13-year retreat? Cave in the Snow? Tenzin Palmo, right? So she read a great story of her childhood when she was at home and she had a chiffon dress on. She walked past the heater and the dress caught on fire. So she's like this whoosh and she's just screaming, runs up the stairs, screaming out to her mother. And her mother just leaps off the bed with a blanket and puts it all over her and smothers the flames. And her mother had this wish that if she could have the pain of her daughter experience, she would take that and that her daughter would have none. So she thought that when she put the blanket over and as her daughter went off to the ambulance. And Tenzin Palmo said, I never felt any pain whatsoever while that was going on. While I was being burnt, I felt no pain at all. So I thought, wow, I like that story. It's like a lived experience, isn't it? It's not just a story. It's like, this is what happened to me. So now we come to material gain. 3 antidotes. So remember, the first one's the opponent. The major opponent is just impermanence. Recollecting nothing is stable. I will recollect that with material gain, I can't keep it. It'll all get left behind upon my death. It actually disintegrates many times. It breaks down. All sorts of things happen. No need to overestimate it with attachment. In terms of thought transformation, everything I have is yours. The merit, everything that I've been doing to create a light for myself, it's yours. Clouds themselves appear quite real, whether your beliefs are more above them. In fact, they have no essence whatsoever. And this is just like the things we possess. I was saying, the subtle impermanence that makes them, when you see them, it looks like they're solid. They're not. So loss. Now, once again, we bring the idea of impermanence to it. Everything disperses. Nothing is kept. All collections disperse.
So again, it just makes me think of those house rescue shows, and people have these enormous houses, and then they fix them up, and then the worry of, well, who's going to inherit it? What's going to happen when I die?
So I also think, as you're saying it, so we watched the show the other night about a big section in New South Wales that this couple had renovated. They got in there. It used to be an old was it the church, belonged to the church, didn't it?
Yeah, an old convent.
An old convent and another building. So you go in, it's quite decrepit and everything, right? So then they change it, make it look really lovely. And what I do, I watch it go, once upon a time it was really lovely. Then it became decrepit. Then they built it up, it looks really lovely again. It's going to become decrepit. Or it'll burn down, you know, it'll change because it can't stay the same. So they need to be attached to these things.
So then don't argue while you're doing the renovation.
Yeah.
Because it might be the end, you might renovate it and then the whole thing burns down.
So everything disperses you, which is nice to remember, because if it does burn down, you can always go, well, of course. This is just how things are.
And we had a great time renovating.
And we had a good time renovating. Yeah. In fact, I'll tell you a little story. So, you know, preparing this class, I was thrown way ahead of this. You know, like I had all 8 classes done. Really happy with it. Then the computer breaks down, it's all gone. It was all kept on the desktop. I never put any things. And it was like this. That was the first thing I went like this. And I just stopped. I just went, no, of course, that's how it happens. That's what it is. You know? Nobody getting upset with us. Everything works like that. You don't have any control over computers. That's what happens.
I was waiting for Eddie's like steam to come out of his ears, because it wasn't just losing all the pictures, it was losing all the notes for each slide.
Yeah.
And the total hissing fit never happened. In fact, Eddie was just more cheerful. I'm like, wow, what happened here?
One of the things I remembered of it was that, you know, I really liked putting it together. I should remember that, not what I've lost. I mean, that had an impact on me. I mean, I don't have to lose that.
So every day he'd come out and go, I've done 2 more slides, and then, you know, 6 hours go by and he'd say, I've done another 2 slides, and I was like, I finished the class, and then the next day, and then the next, and then all gone.
The whole collection.
And the computer says no, blue screen of death.
Yeah, that's right. So it's really great.
Store factory settings.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, the collection dispersed. But yeah, your happiness doesn't have to. You don't have to make up now a bad mind about it. It doesn't follow. It's just a natural thing. Right? So that was one of the things I thought, wow, I don't have to become unhappy about that. You know, it's true, I have no control over the computer, anything external to me. I don't have control over that. But my mind I could have. So I could be patient, I could accept impermanence and accept that I actually enjoy doing it. And I get another chance to do it again, which I'm doing at present. You know? Yeah. No, that's right. And it's true, you know, it's just like, that's just how it works. And I find it's such a, to me, that's the thing that the Dharma works. If you put it into, if you just put what you know into action, boy, it makes a big difference to you.
And to everybody else.
That's right. Exactly. We're not alone in this, are we? We're like in community here. Yeah. Yep. And that's what, you know, that's the thing. You know, I found them. When I find these things and keep them, it's like when I lose mine, you can't get upset. That's real hypocrisy, isn't it? It's just going to go, no, you know, like the same thing. It's like, wow, I really enjoyed finding it. I know somebody else, they're going to really enjoy finding mine. No doubt about it. I was happy, now you'd be happy.
And that's also the blessing of the Guru, like being at the teachings with His Holiness. And so then you've got a chance for all of your virtues to actually ripen and be able to have a positive response. Comes like, it feels like easy and naturally.
So when you lose things, like give the losses to self-cherishing. So you know in the thought transformation practices, you know, your major enemy is self-cherishing. You want to get rid of self-cherishing. So anything negative happens, you just place it on self-cherishing. Put it on your own indifference. to others' suffering. So, like it's all a wonderful thing. It's all workable. That's just lovely thing. And so drops of dew dissolve. So I took that from the book on special insight. So that, as you probably know, in the Diamond Cutter Sutra, the 8
verse at the end.
the verse at the end, like a bubble, like a drop of dew in water. This is how all phenomena exist: impermanent, lacking self. So like I said before, impermanence really like so close to no self. And when you bring your attention in on what you are experiencing, because of impermanence, there's nothing to like, yeah. And it also shows like that is like what you think and feel is true is not, and you'll see it. It's just like it gives you this big gap straight away. Just you go, wow.
But, I mean, with the dew as well, like to us, because we're grasping at it as being true, we think the dewdrops actually disappear. But they just turn back into other forms of the same constituents. The water doesn't disappear, it just evaporates and whatever. So we lose our glasses, we think they no longer exist.
So with this idea of the water going back like it, so it's the same thing here. When you place it in on your feelings or your mind, you see it's all mind. And mind is clear. There's nothing in there. You can't even see mind. Right? And that's what you become aware of that immediately, and that's just the way it is. So don't make up like more of anything. Right? And of course, you can't get that, and you place on self-charity, you get that, and you go to impermanence. So we've got this real range of things we can do to combat aversion and attachment. So praise, I will recollect it. These great words, right? And you take it away, lift it up, we're put down, impermanent. Again, whatever I possess, whatever, great feelings I feel when others praise me, but don't get attached to them, don't cling to them, but offer up the good feelings to others. And that's really all praise is. So, I'm doing a module on patience at the moment. And there's a great section in this too about, say, Kinsa Rinpoche was saying, it's really surprising how people get so upset when they're criticized. And he said, why? He said, does criticism actually do anything to your body? Do words actually affect your body in any way, harm your body in any way? You go, well, no. And then your mind, like, what is there that can be upset? And it's like, And it was, anyway, so I was really going to go, wow, that's true. If I could only just remember, if I didn't just cling to the words I heard and thought they were having got me, or they were true in some way and truly existent, well, you'd be fine. But we don't know. We hear the words and we grab them.
You want to explain I don't know,
I'd suggest that once again is to really look at where you are up to in your own spiritual development. So if we're talking about ourselves, Helen, then you go, okay, well then I can look at impermanence. I could look at the thing of how I could use it myself in terms of these different ways. So Helen just asked the question about what happens if I get abused again and again. So you're relating to yourself, Helen, or to somebody else? Okay, well, so with somebody else, then I don't know much about Dharma. So what we normally do is, different ways, get out of the way of that person, you get really affected by it. If you can't get away from the person, if you're always in their proximity and you're being abused, don't get angry with them. That's another one. And then you've got to find out, why shouldn't I get angry with them? I've got to find out all these ways that it's reasonable not to get angry. So the person will definitely have to do some inner work, look at their own responses. Because anger won't solve the situation. So we've got to find something else you can do. Disparagement. So it's interesting, isn't it, that some people are disparaged at one scene and a year later they're hailed as heroes. That happens all the time in the world, doesn't it? People are called idiots and stupid, and suddenly you find their invention is actually something genius. And wow, they're fantastic. So don't get too hung up on these things people say to you. In terms of thought transformation, this is wonderful. I take the defeat, that you have the victory. And of course, what's being defeated is not oneself, but one's self-cherishing and self-grasping. That's what's being defeated here.
So Eddie, if you feel like you're being criticised, but that's my self-cherishing thing.
Harmed, that's right. And this is good.
Defeat that by going, yes.
Yeah. Self-cherishing needs to be defeated, needs to be harmed. In fact, all negative mental states should be harmed. But if you put it on yourself, one's conventionally existent self, this is not what's being recommended.
So in a way, like when people say they grew up being yelled at and abused or whatever, they often then will go, well, no matter what, I'm never going to do that to my kids.
Yeah.
I won't pass on that kind of abuse or disparagement. So actually, that is in a way doing this, because you're taking that abuse as a child and putting it onto your indifference. And so then when you have kids, you're not indifferent.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. And think of it as just like being thunder, So we're all familiar with thunder. It just arises, it comes and goes. It's like a big shock when you first hear it, but it's gone pretty quickly. It can be unpleasant and shocking, but it's a loud sound. So fame. All fames and successes are left behind. So you might have read that poem, Ozymandias. Yeah, it's just like that, isn't it? This guy's thinking he was so great, and all that's left of him is the head of a statue in the desert. No one knows who he is. Who's the statue? What is it of? And he's going, I am the great Ozymandias. I've done this and I've done that.
Well, I look at all those statues in town. It's like, oh yeah, whatever, boring statue. And they're probably really important people.
Yeah, but there you go. You see, there's an example of it. Yeah. Once again, all my successes and merits belong to others. Give them away. Don't. You can see this is really getting at this idea of clinging. The clinging. And they're just reflections. Overestimating disrepute, it's changeable. Bad guy today, hero tomorrow. Every failure and defeat I experience belongs to self-cherishing. And it's like lightning. Once again, it's like this flash, and it's gone.
15 minutes of fame, 15 minutes of disrepute. Forgot it.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Not me. Just things said about me. It's not me. We've got a quote now by Wonka Rinpoche. So once again, it's similar to the first one we started off. He says, look, make up your mind to ignore the 8 worldly concerns, and you will receive this life's comforts, happiness and fame, as if you had courted them. And that often happens, whereas if you actually seek them, it's so problematic. So a worldly Dharma is an object of the thought of either attachment or aversion. So like I said before, it's not the thing itself that's the problem. It's called worldly Dharma when that becomes an object of attachment or aversion. It's either an object of worldly pleasure that we cling to and desire to have, or an object of suffering that we dislike and desire to be free of or to not experience. And these concerns distract us from genuine Dharma practice. So here's one for you and I, Jeanette, from His Holiness. He says, most of our distractions in meditation involve the 8 worldly concerns. When our mind wanders while listening to teachings, our attention is strayed to one of those 8. We postpone positive deeds, such as generosity or helping others, because our time is occupied with these 8. For those reasons, Dharma practitioners are warned about seeking the temporary happiness of only this life. Not because it's bad or sinful, but because it impedes us from actualizing the spiritual realizations that will bring about long-term happiness. So we come to the end of our first class. We looked at gross and subtle impermanence, these 8 worldly concerns that contaminate pure practice, and I've offered you some solutions. So the Buddha spoke of giving up attachment to the pleasures of this life in order to lead us on a path to a more stable and profound states of fulfillment. It can be actualized only by Dharma practice. But these 8 work against Dharma practice. Sentient beings naturally seek happiness, and there's nothing wrong with having it. We want to free ourselves from attachment to inferior states of happiness that are in the nature of dukkha, or unsatisfactory. Rather than seek situations and things that at first appear wonderful, but eventually become troublesome, it's wiser to generate spiritual happiness that is based on more stable, realistic, and beneficial states of mind. So in what we've presented here, these spiritual happiness based on more stable, realistic, and beneficial states of mind. So we have the stability of everything being changeable and impermanent. What we have to do is have a renunciation to the opposite of that. Renunciation to these 8 worldly concerns. Like, give them up, let them go, don't work. Attachment to those 8 worldly, aversion to them. Realistically, we've got to rid ourselves of this indifference to others and the self-cherishing we have. So there was this other antidote we had. And the beneficial state of mind, wisdom. Wisdom seeing things as they are. So we have a number of antidotes, hoping we'll put them into practice and use them and bring about our welfare and the welfare of others. Here's some readings you could apply.
So the notes are in the members area, or if you purchase the notes online, they would have come out the email with all the links would have come out half an hour before class.
And I should say, so these are all from the, provided by the FPMT book. There's also 2 other, there's one other one I'd like you to have a look at, and it's called Subtle and Gross Impermanence. So have a look at that. That's interesting for your mind. So I'll dedicate now. So through the spirit of us engaging in the study, may all our teachers and all students of the Dharma, our benefactors, visitors and sentient beings have happiness. May they be free from suffering, and may their suffering ripen upon our indifference. Never separated from the happiness free of suffering, may every being abide in equanimity, the quality of all things. Thank you, everybody. Now, it's great seeing you all again. It's really good to be back in your company. It's nice, eh? Back in talk directly to one another.